Okay, does anybody have any questions or reflections? And people online as well are welcome. Firstly, I just want to say I'm really, really sorry you had to go through this. Like, thank you for being so brave and so like vulnerable in sharing that story. Because it's significant, and I don't think, because maybe we're not seeing every day to really fully comprehend it. But to see what's happening with the detainees and to see what, it's real. I know it's real, but people are really afraid to look and to see it. So I thank you for sharing this, because it's sure it's not easy for you. So thank you so much. Yeah. For the doctor.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming, and I'm sorry it was a little late getting here, but I think I captured much of what you wanted to say, and I just have a question about how do we in Canada, because I think you're right about the fact that we feel that we are somehow better than the folks down south, right? There's a kind of a attempt to sort of pat ourselves on the back to say we're not as racist as people down south. But there's an element of racism that's structural and deeply embedded in institutions. I see it in my own institution. I just wrote about it with respect to the Canadian Armed Forces. It's so embedded, sometimes we don't get to see the realities of it until it hits us in the face. And I think it's starting to hit us in the face now. I was just watching online the protests in Los Angeles against ICE, for example. So there is a pushback against that discrimination. There is a pushback against what's happening right now, but perhaps folks waited too late to push back. How do you advise the Canadian people, especially those of us who feel that somehow for a long time racism has been swept under the rug? How do you advise us to respond to this new attempt to push back against things like EDI, to push back against all the gains that we've made in the last, say, 2 to 3 years, particularly since the George Floyd moment? What kind of strategy would you recommend for us in this war against this pushback against EDI?
Thank you. So, I mean, and I've been also this colony for a while, so I don't really know the ins and outs of exactly what is happening. But I do have, it's almost as if I feel like there should be, I just want to give a warning, just because of, I was in that same situation, like when you went to school in New York and you're teaching in LA, Florida becomes America versus Canada. What's happening there is like ridiculous. And so you just expect that, okay, well, Florida has, it's not just country, it's wild, but we're safe and free in New York. Things don't happen like that in New York or LA. But of course, that belief requires internalization of the fiction of the border in the first place. You must believe that there is some type of we and them, that the imaginary fiction between supposedly two colonial empires is a fundamental difference. And so that people, the ideas, the racism and the violence of the lynch mob in the South cannot travel to New York, cannot cross the border, cannot go all the way to Alaska, to Yukon, etc. I don't think lynch mobs, racism, fascism, Nazism really respects borders. And so if you start believing their own manifestation of the border, which is also a self-colonial product, you get into the trap of thinking that it's not us yet. But there are no borders, and the Nazis are here now. And they are not the specific Nazis with a Mississippi accent. They are Nazis with an Alberta accent. It's basically the exact same thing. My suggestion is to not wait for them to be shouting the N-word at you in the bus stop as a required day-to-day experience. Don't say that, okay, well, now you've gone too far. Any slight, any itch, any move in any type of direction should be responded to full force. That we recognize that any move to disturb our peace to concretize our racial inferiority, however, minor it is presented. That should be understood as a full-out war against ourselves, because it is. What they do is they try to continuously infect certain things, make certain things normal, say, okay, well, we're not going to be a little woke here, so let's kind of remove Black history, etc. Do a little thing or a little larger things right there, and eventually they surround you, and you can't do a thing about it because the state is now openly under the control of fascists. So they slightly do a microaggression. They slightly remove DEI and call it something else because of things. That is the lynch mob working. Don't say that, okay, well, it's not yet now. You move one step in any type of direction, you get the full course of the pushback.
What does that pushback look like or should look like? When it may be like a microaggression, something, what would you suggest?
For me, this is the subject of another workshop that I think about, is what you do in white supremacist resurgence. And the anti-DEI movement, which is basically Jim Crow, and they just found a new way to kind of make it a thing. I am an anti-colonialist, so I don't believe that there is any type of possible reform with the people who have continuously normalized the occupation of indigenous lands and continuously facilitate the anti-blackness that is necessary to uphold. So for me, I would suggest that the most important thing to do is to divorce yourself from this idea of waiting, of small moves, etc., and to think only in terms of, and this is just me, think only in terms of anti-colonialism, that this is a war that is being fought. It's a war that is being fought at a subterranean level in prisons and in deportations, but it's also the same war, the same literal people that are bombing places that are considered full of these disposable people, or using them to create concentration camps for the other disposable people. So regardless of where you are, all of this is a war. And so when I experience a microaggression, I'm trying to train myself to not be satisfied with calling them out, with stopping them and just say, don't do that, it's quite rude, or whatever elaborate version is of that. My idea is you do whatever you call it microaggression, and must at least reply with something that incapacitates your ability to further the colonial state. Every tickling of my foot needs to be a bombing of the ideology of white supremacy. And that is a response. That's back and forth, because the back and forth, when they own the state, you don't win anything. It is, they do a small thing and assume that, just like when they were going around in lynch mobs and just making fun of people that were in the street. A lot of Black people knew that that was happening in the 1920s. They knew what was coming. They knew that that was a lynch mob then. And so they already prepared. They already got themselves together in order to kind of push back against it. They weren't calling them out saying, don't copy them. It was understood that every trickling element of racism is camouflaging a wider war. They should be addressed.
Question online. Yeah.
I think the volume is on. Yeah, go ahead, whoever's online to ask a question.
Randy, do you want to unmute and go ahead and ask the question? Okay, I can read it from the chat if you want. So, hey, Professor Yannick, it's nice to see you. My question may not have an answer, and it is a question I have been grappling with since our Black Lives Matter class in HWS. Colonialism is a global problem. You say flee, but flee where? Like Baldwin said, if they come for you in the morning, they'll come for us in the evening. If colonialism is a pandemic that continues to mutate and spread, is there truly a safe place?
No, there is not a safe place. But even the runaway who left the plantation was running into a state that was not safe for them. fleeing and running and escaping and being fugitive does not necessarily mean, it's not dependent on the fact that there is a safe space available. It is moving away from here. As I said, I would to encourage as much as I can, whoever I meet in this colony, be like, hey, they're coming for you, but I'm not waiting around here either. There's no waiting around for things to get better. We are, as you say, in an empire. We are in a globalized white supremacist and colonial order. And so you don't have a little safe space, because if you find a safe space, they'll come for you there. For me, running is not necessarily dependent on the safe space. What it is the position where you are going to flee from the domination of thought that will kind of convince you, to persuade you to stay around them, to believe in them, to work with them, to wait for their reform, to wait for their enlightenment. All of these things that, as the slave master would very often tell the slave, one day you will be emancipated, just be nice, be kind, things are going to get better. The runaway did not stay there, did not stay and say, well, maybe this person might actually change their mind. And even if they did change their mind, they're like, we don't want to be here regardless. You already crossed the red line. There's no staying. So fleeing is to depart from the belief that there is a possibility of change and reform in a settler-colonial state. You must already assume that the future is going to be beyond and apart from them. And that is the only way, as far as I'm concerned, that you could take seriously the project of building something else. Thank you. I didn't know I got an HWS citizen. Well, Instagram works then. Cool.
Thank you for that wonderful talk. As a political science student, it's really scary looking at witnessing what's happening in the US right now, especially with what's happening in the university there and how Trump continuously harass and continues to be aggressive, especially to Harvard, and continues to defund universities and exile professors like yourself. I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts in this rise of anti-intellectualism, and is there a way for right now for us students who studies this current social issues always seem to be seen less important, especially in academics? What would you suggest that students to continue fighting this injustice towards anti-academic or anti-intellectualism that's prevalent right now in the United States and even all over the world?
I wish I had a strong answer about what to do, because again, I'm also coming from the tragedy of political science. I mean, my undergrad was in political science, and they tricked me. They said that it was politics, so I was like, okay, cool. I'm a political. Let's do this. And then they mistakenly sent me an email because I brought some friends, Indigenous activist friends, in my required Canadian politics course to kind of push back against their propaganda, just because I was potentially not feeling what they were saying. And they mistakenly sent me an email saying that I was intimidating the white student in the class, and so they were trying to find a way to get me out. They were building a case against me, and so I had to email them and be like, "Well, I think you sent this to me by mistake," but obviously they kind of were trying to get me. And I could have did a campaign about it, but I just kind of wanted to be snarky. Because also in high school, they suspended me again because I was defending. I just came back from Botswana when I was living there, and they had they kept on, the teacher kept on saying Africa is poor and blah, 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 all the same things. And I just came back like, yo, I was there and you were basically talking about colonialism. You're never mentioning imperialism, never mentioning anything. You just think Africa just wanted to be poor and that's it. Regardless of what poverty is, etc. He just kept on saying it, got suspended. I was a nerd, I was not doing anything, I was writing poetry by journal. All people were gambling, smoking in the house, that happened to them. I got suspended immediately when I challenged the teacher. So that's high school, that's undergrad. And then here I am. So I don't know that there is any hope for me, particularly in faith, and actually kind of do anything outside of, in the university. Even in the university where we are, in the Black Studies professors, we're always putting in the little small rooms. The radical students are always kind of marginalized. It's never a place that is open and willing to accept us. And so I believe, must at least, and it's difficult because we sometimes just grew up believing in like PhDs and professors and the romance of the life, but we must at least kind of depart and divorce from that romance a bit, to think of intellectualism, or to think of thought itself, organic intellectualism, writing, art, etc., as the opposite of the university, the opposite of the institutions that are there to be agents of the state that repress us, so that we are only half stepped in there. We're only kind of like existing there, kind of observing the case, because they are not going to, any more than the state will, be enlightened and say, hey, wait a minute, free thought and anti-oppression is going to be something to be supported. And Columbia was the radical school. That's why I went there. They're immediately started to sell people off to the state. So if it's happening in Columbia, it's happening pretty much everywhere. So I would just believe that radical philosophy, anti-colonial philosophy, or philosophy that is of any use, must begin from the point that the standardized, commercialized, institutionalized philosophy is the enemy of intellectual life. It is anti-intellectual. The university is anti-intellectual, and I would say right now that it's actually over with. Because what are they doing? They're just doing nothing except chasing intellectual. I'm pessimistic.
Thank you so much for coming to speak. I was wondering, within like American education institutions, were there any specific individuals that you were most like disappointed with or were there any that surprised you in how much they were pushing back, or is it just, and then that's a very bleak question.
Well, again, my situation is very different because, like, for me, the reason I chose Columbia is because at that time there was the horror list going out, and it was a list of the most dangerous professors. And at that point, Columbia had the most dangerous professor. And so then I was like, okay, well, this is for me, because Horowitz is rather racist. And so I went to Columbia, and then the most dangerous institution in Columbia, well, with the most dangerous professors, was MSAS, Middle East, South Asian, and African Studies. So I went to MSAS. And then in that, the most dangerous professor was a professor called Joseph Bassan. He was a Palestinian intellectual. And he's, again, right now being targeted in session, so he became my supervisor. So I didn't have the opportunity to see the other side. I didn't feel betrayed because I was already suspicious of the tragedies that I experienced. I surrounded myself with people who were not the type of people that would suspend me, but the type of people that would actually kind of inspire me to kind of get myself together. And so I kind of was lucky enough to be around those people and never really saw anything outside of that. That's why there was a type of like that intellectual environment that I had were people who were already targeted and were already kind of ruined by education. So I was in community, in an anti-communal space. And because of that, I felt okay. But all of these people are targeted, all of these people are now chased. I don't know where Joseph Masada is, not even answering my emails, etc. There are people who are just, the anti-fascist professor is now at the University of Toronto. He was there as well. These people cannot exist as they once did. So the people who would have betrayed me, I didn't have a chance to trust them in the first place, so it never really was a factor in my life. But it will be a factor in a number of people who, because of the romance of the university and the thought, etc., will go trusting in people who would say that they're studying Black history or anti-racism, etc., and then see those people become deans and become like administrators to facilitate their dispossession of other junior faculties or marginalized faculty. Those people will be heartbroken at their path to intellectualism. And I feel something for them. But luckily for me, the violence that I experienced through my entire educational career warned me away from them in the first place.
We have another question online. Harry,
Yes, thank you, Professor. You've done a wonderful job in what you're doing. You are trying, and thank you. My question is, was there no woke individuals at Columbia University who could have, even if they were a closet, that you could have sided with?
There were, but that Columbia is just where I went to do my graduate study. So I was teaching at small liberal arts schools like for years after that. So even those people I wasn't in contact with as much anymore, it was my immediate institution. And I was lucky because in my other institutions, I did face the same type of pushback as normal and natural for somebody like the positions. But in my last institution, there were people, though my School of Critical Studies at CalArts were, for the vast majority of people, were support, even though support of me escaping. So there are people, but there are not enough people to make things safe. There are not enough people, there's not enough solidarity to go around to kind of prevent that knock on your door. So what my life has been now is to, in fact, I feel more that it's my responsibility to comfort those people who are still within the borders and always in the targets of the immediate target of the state. That, if anything, me being slightly less on the radar is my opportunity to kind of like link with them and try to build things with them. So the anti-colonialists, the woke, the radicals, all these people, we must make our digital community of thinkers outside of the community that is complicit and pretty much facilitating white supremacist power in the education system.
You know, it's sad because there's more of us than there is them. But they are more organized, I feel.
I don't know if Bobby Torrey or Malcolm X said that, but they said exactly that. Is that there are more of us, but they're more organized. The white supremacists are more organized. And the problem is, one of the reasons that the white supremacists are more organized is because there's too many on our sides that keep on believing in them. Like their position is to eliminate us. Our position is to shake them by the collar and say, you are ignorant, you are doing something wrong, and you must stop. Because there is a faith in white supremacy that is on the progressive and the left side that has no bearing in reality, because it's been quite a while that white supremacy has been killing people. And there is no reason to actually have faith in them. So one of the things that I kind of set my mind to is to kind of destroy as much as possible this undue faith in the miraculous redemption of the people who would sell your children at a drop of a dime. That belief system, that faith must, and it might even feel unethical. It might, because we are told that, well, we must forgive, we must believe that in people's power to change and all these type of things. That is well and good, but not in concentration camps, not in the time of open bootstrapping, etc. So I do believe that the people who have represented our side have been too long the people who are ready to forgive them. But not all people who are enslaved are ready to forgive the bastards. Some people are not for it, and some people would run and do worse.
Thank you.
For this talk, and I feel like my mind's just like going everywhere because I'm like, have I created a facade for myself for like where I stand as a like in university, and then like what I believe can happen, like the amount of change that can happen. Like we're all part of a student group together, like in the political science department, being like, yeah, we're gonna like start a community and we're gonna like really shake these people that like you are talking about. Then I'm like, is it worth it? Like that's what's in my mind. So like if I were to like change, I guess, what my end goal is to like this better, I'm losing my words honestly, but like how should I be like shaping my perception of like the other side as like a person that is trying to make change in my university?
I'll say it like this, because in some ways, this is possible that I'm wrong. I don't believe it at all, but it is very possible that I'm wrong. That maybe we're just at that point where you just nudge the next white supremacist and they will somehow open up and become like lover of humanity. Maybe. I don't believe that. I don't think it's worth risking the chance. And so what I would say is that, there are other ways to teach. You don't always have to come with your hat in hand and beg them to see your humanity. You can teach through power. You can teach through your own freedom. The spectacle of your own freedom is an educative tool as well. And it's not necessary that everyone is only going to learn because you beg them enough to be able to see your humanity. You could be outside of their power. You could be free. And in being free, your being free itself might, if the whole goal is to show that you're human, then maybe you no longer being subjected to their whims is proof enough, if that is the goal. I don't know why it's the goal, but apparently that's a goal for a lot of people. Because being freedom enough is good. But if you want to fix them, then maybe fix them through your own freedom, rather than fix them with changing. Because not only that, freedom is contagious, it inspires, but also putting yourself in a position of always hoping that they change is also contagious. And so you train other generations to believe that supplicating and taking the knee and bending the knee for white supremacists' change of heart is the way to go. What happened? They don't agree. They have not, the slave master is not moved to tears by the fact that the slave is in a supine position. It sees it as an opportunity. And so you facilitate a type of as a type of affirming of the slave master's position by continuously believing in their humanity. You can believe in their humanity all you want, and keep that to yourself. Get your freedom, get your power, get what you need to do to survive and not be in their control. And then maybe when people see you not taking their golf, then you could they will literally kind of learn the lesson that way. And I would suggest that you would make other friends on our side rather than continuously talk to people who just don't like you in the first place.
Yeah, maybe I want to take a bit of a space. So I'm here sitting and hearing you and thinking about the work we do as an organization and the amount of sessions of anti-racism, anti-oppression, anti-ableism, like all the things, the education, and trying to understand, because we see the shifts that happen during the sessions, right? Like we see people transforming and challenging themselves to think differently. And I know that one session doesn't make doesn't make people that attend the session a completely different person, but they start to understand things that they may not have seen before. And so obviously there is white supremacy and strong white supremacy that are organized and have taken space and are moving politically and advancing in Alberta, that are starting to do a lot of things like political moves. And there is a big group of people that are just so lost that the urgency of the economic situation is making them shift towards the believing the white supremacy, that they're going to be solving their economic issues, and forgetting that there's this other thing that is happening here, all the racism, all the ableism, all the patriarchy that is advancing with them. And so the importance of that work with the middle people, and the importance of a work that is done in ways that doesn't feed the white supremacy discourse, doesn't allow the white supremacy to polarize the world in the way that they want to do it, right? Because for the white supremacy to advance, what I think is they try to polarize the world for them, right? Like someone has to be good and someone has to be bad. And so how do we move with the good people? And so I'm trying to think about how do we do that education in a way that is effective, that avoid the backlash, because at the end, when there is backlash in this kind of work, the people who suffers is the people who has been historically marginalized. Like it's just coming back to spaces where or ways of doing things that we haven't been for a long time, or restricting access to library, to books and things like that are so concerning, right? So I guess my question and my reflection is about that middle space and the education and the work that should be done there, because it's important. For me, it's an important work to stop white supremacy. It's like to give them a wall somewhere, ideological wall. There is a political wall and there is an ideological wall that should be put. And so the role of universities is important because they concentrate an ideological battle place, but at the same time, they are part of the state. You're right. So how do we do that outside of those walls, outside of the university? And how do you see the work with that people that are just in the middle, that are so many confused or present or that want to learn? Like, how do you see that?
Thank you. So yes, like I'm also connected to a tradition that used to have breakfast programs in the depressed communities. Like the Black Panthers specifically did that. They went and they used the breakfast programs to educate and to kind of push back against white supremacy in those middle spaces. And I'm also part of a community, a spoken word community, because I remember when I was young and doing a spoken word type of thing, a lot of the ideas were, it starts with the children. It starts with the community to learn. But even then I was a little bit suspicious because I was wondering if that has been said in the last generation and then the generation before that. Because it might not be enough to work in these middle spaces or starts with the children. That might be just something that you have to do, but that might not be your chief political move. And the idea that it is only that the Black Panthers were only the breakfast program without anything else takes away some of the spirit of the Black Panthers movement and only gives only one element of it. And that's extremely dangerous because, as we know, as many community organization workshops and sessions that we have, the state owns the schools, the state owns the churches and the families. It has ideology in a number of different places. So when we move and get 20 people, every 20 people that we change their values, they change 20,000. So at a certain point, it just becomes bad. The more you kind of work on your little community group, the more that they actually are working on their own community groups, so they're also having their education programs, etc. So you must, as far as I'm concerned, not only depend on things that are just teach your kids and teach the community. That is a normal, natural thing. That cannot be the end all of the work. That is just something that you just do, just like brush your teeth in the morning. It's just a habit. You must use because the benefit of our society is that the truth is on the side of the oppressor. So it just takes a few people on our side to combat what is the fickle lie of white supremacy in the first place. It's better to kind of actually move in a counter ideological program against them in a public way, in a contesting ideological space, rather than to be satisfied with maybe this person who is being transformed is going to lead to the next one and lead to the next one. I've never been in a government office, but I imagine that they're thinking the same thing. Maybe this person can be brought into white supremacy and that can do the next one, there's the next one. And they own CNN, they own Fox News. So we're just not gonna compete at that level. We might as well just do what we're doing as a matter of responsibility, but also continuously think, and for me, this is the ethical position, that it is the quality that has to be pushed back, not try to hope that people inside the quality are changed and that will somehow lead to reform and make a better quality. the quality continuously has the power to produce people who are the enemies of life. And anti-colonialism seems to be the program rather than anything else. Totally forgot. So I also, I don't know if it was clear, but I am basically now a raw intellectual. So I've been doing things like talks and online courses and residences and a number of different things that kind of put me outside of the institution. So I have a website, which might be on the introduction, but if not, I can send it to you at yannickgiovannimarshall.net, which has all my courses. That one that's up now is based on my forthcoming book, which is called The in-depth Application, about marronage versus protest. And I'm also going to be doing courses on like unthinking patriotism, etc. So if you're interested in any of that, I should have plugged this before, but please contact me.